So the South Norfolk Claylands landscape is special for so many reasons. To start with, it's a very old landscape and it's got lots of old features of the landscape like hedges and ponds and old woodlands, big open commons, old hay meadows, still intact. They're still there, and although across England a lot of these things have disappeared in the last century, they're still clinging on in South Norfolk, which just makes it such a fascinating place, both in terms of its history, how it looks, and for wildlife. Whenever I talk about the South Norfolk Claylands and the species that live here, I always sort of feel like one of Macbeth's witches, because I always start by talking about great crested newts and barn owls and hedgehogs and bats and things that move around at night. The truth is that it's a really rich landscape for wildlife, and a lot of these are species that have lived alongside us in farmed landscapes for a long time, and they are these creatures that very much rely on networks of habitat. So great crested newts, they rely on not just the ponds but on scrubland and hedges and meadows near the ponds, and hedgehogs, they need to move through the landscape and forage over a wide area. So it's this whole sort of intermingling of these little bits of habitat and these species that rely on habitat across the whole landscape, not just on one place. Over the last century, and particularly sort of really since the end of the war, we've seen a lot of fragmentation in the countryside, and what we mean by that is that the existing bits of habitat have become slowly more isolated from each other. So if you flew over a lot of England, you would see little pockets of habitat like an ancient woodland or a common, but they're sort of separated from each other, and that means that the species can't easily move between them. So for us, it's really important as ecologists to start thinking at this landscape scale and putting these bits of habitat back in connection with each other. And what science tells us is that the more habitat we have for wildlife, not only the more species we have, but the more individuals of each species that we have. And then those populations are more resilient. So they're more resilient to things like disease and to climate change and to things like this. So really, connectivity is about building a more resilient landscape so that wildlife can cope with everything that we're talking about is likely to happen in the future. South Norfolk is largely a farmed landscape. There's a lot of arable farms here and a few mixed farms as well. And that means that farmers and landowners are really the most important group of people to effect change across South Norfolk. And what we want to do is to work with those landowners, not just to encourage them to do the right thing for wildlife, but to use this sort of cutting edge mapping technology that we've got to highlight the key areas where connectivity can be put back into the landscape. And through this Green Recovery Fund that we've got, we can actually work alongside those landowners, we can give them advice, and we can also help them financially do that work on their land.
So we're really keen through this project to make sure that the interventions that are delivered are informed by science. So we're looking to bring to that existing mapping information around habitats, the locations of trees, where there are ponds, and indeed historically where there used to be ponds. So that information is all out there, and it's about how we bring that together. And in addition to that, the Wildlife Trust has recently commissioned Southampton University to undertake some connectivity heat mapping, which starts to use those mapping resources to give us an understanding and a visual representation of how well connected the landscape is at the moment, to then allow us to target our interventions. So whether we look to strengthen existing corridors and make those much better for wildlife, or try to bridge those gaps in the landscape where actually there are significant barriers to wildlife movement. So it's bringing that information together in a format that will allow, whether that's farmers, landowners, local communities, to make informed decisions about where they should be acting for maximum benefit.
I mean, there's a variety of different ways to get involved. So, you know, if you're a landowner and a farmer, then please get in touch and start by having an open conversation with us. So our Habitat Connectivity Officer, Ben Newton, would be very happy to come and talk to you about opportunities to potentially being involved with improving your land for wildlife. Or it might be that you're a parish council and you're really keen on developing sort of meadow strips around your village. And again, Sue Crimes, our Community Engagement Officer, will be very happy to hold a conversation with you. So it's about coming along, talking to us and trying to help us sort of raise awareness what opportunities you feel there is for improving wildlife habitat within your local community. But also we're giving a call out to those existing community groups as well. So those community groups that are already doing amazing work to improve wildlife for their local area. You know, it's what else can we sort of like look to help and support you in sort of maybe taking further action if possible. And also, you know, for example, schools. You know, schools may want to come and get in touch with us and maybe look at their school grounds and how their school grounds fit within a nature recovery network. But also we're looking for volunteers, community volunteers, people that are just passionate about wildlife. We want people to get involved in citizen science to help us record sort of like iconic species that are found across the Claylands. We're also looking for volunteers to help us to carry out hedgerow and habitat surveying as well. So people that can be our eyes on the ground, helping us to build a picture of the wildlife and the habitat conditions that are across the county. There are just a huge number of ways to be involved, and some of them we're probably not even aware of at the moment because this is a developing project. This is something new for Norfolk Wildlife Trust as well. So we'll be listening, we'll be talking, we'll be trying to understand how communities can work together in order to create a fantastic nature recovery network.
So one of the really important parts of this project for me is the fact that we're able to really develop the local skills in conservation in this area, and particularly through young people. So we're delighted that we're working with the University of East Anglia to recruit 2 interns to this project on the engagement side and on the habitat connectivity side. So this project has been made possible by the government funds from the Green Recovery Fund. So that's from the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and it's been administered by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. We're delighted on this project to be working with a range of partners, because I think these kind of projects really need to be a wide range of people delivering them. So we're working with Norfolk County Council, we're working with the RSPB, the local FWAG, which is the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, the People's Trust for Endangered Species and the University of East Anglia. So it's a real wide range of partners, as well as obviously all the local communities who we're supporting in this project.